All right, welcome to Diametrically Agreeing. I know it's been a long hiatus for like the five people watch this, but I thought I'd start something a little different. I want to try something. So I'm trying a little exercise, which is in the next 30 days or till the end of the month. I'm going to watch a movie a day. I'm going to watch a movie that a lot of people know about, maybe nobody knows about, maybe some people know about, and just give you a movie review. Some of these will be like, I don't know, 10 minutes long, some may be 30 minutes long, some may be an hour, just depending on how much I want to talk. So welcome. Welcome. I kind of renamed the title to this, which is I watch movies so you don't have to. Mainly because I know that my taste in movies can be varied. It can be odd. I know many times people who know me do not want to watch the movies I watch. But regardless, I thought I would introduce everybody to movies I watch over the next month. All right. So welcome. I hope everybody's good. I hope everybody's seated. I hope everybody has drink in hand. So cheers to Wednesday, August 3rd. Am I right? It is Wednesday, right? So let's start this off. I want to start this off with a movie I thought I knew a lot about, and I know almost nothing about it. I watched it yesterday, and I'm very happy I watched it. I'm happy for two reasons. The first reason is that I hadn't seen it in a long time. The last time I saw it, I think I was maybe a teenager. And one of the reasons I watched it was because of the poster. I loved the poster. And anybody who knows me knows I've always been in love with New York. I've always loved the idea of New York. I've always loved the myth and the legend of New York, especially New York from immigrant times, from Ellis Island, from the Italians and Jews and Germans coming over to probably about the late 70s, early 80s. Rolling Stones, people playing CBGBs, the possibility of getting mugged, really crappy Bronx, things you don't find in New York that much anymore. All right. So as a kid, of course, I was very enamored with New York, and I was enamored with the allure of it. Now, of course, bring it to present day. For some reason, I seem to be on a little bit here. Let's see if I can change. Oh, I like that better. Let's see if I can. Present day, I seem to be going through a little bit of a mobster kick, especially the creation of the mob, how the mob came to be in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I'm kind of in that mode lately. So I hope my levels are all right. I tested them once, but I don't know. I've had this thing set like this for a while. So I watched Once Upon a Time in America. Now, if you have not seen this movie, I'm going to, if let's say you're watching some gangster movies. Let's say you were going to go on a little bit of a binge for a couple days. I would start with Once Upon a Time in America. I really would. The reason why is because not only is it heavily influenced by past mobster films, Angel's Envy, or no, what is it? The Dirty Faces of Angels, things like that, all the way up to being inspired by things like Godfather. Now, the cast is insane. The cast is nuts. Robert De Niro, you have Elizabeth McGovern, James Woods, Treat Williams is in it. Burt Young, by the way. Burt Young, I think, is a very underrated talent. And if you don't know who Burt Young is, and I was going to bring you into something you might know in modern times. Burt Young was the aging gangster in The Sopranos, who was old. He was getting decrepit. He had a bad cough. He was dying of cancer. So they sent him out on one last mob hit because what's he going to do? He's going to die anyways. He's going to die anyways. He's great. Burt Young is fantastic. Joe Pesci is in it. Danny Aiello is in it. William Forsythe is in it. James Hayden is in it. I did mention James Russo, right? Now, I'll come back around to that because I am a secret fan of James Russo. I think James Russo is another one of those very underrated talent, and he generally plays the same person. He really does. I think James Russo probably plays James Russo. It's almost like that William Shatner thing, where like William Shatner always plays William Shatner, you know, and he is phenomenal in this movie, and even though his screen time is limited, just like Elizabeth McGovern. Now keep in mind there are two cuts of this movie. There is a cut that is right around 2.5 hours, and there is a cut that is right around 3.5 hours, which is the director's cut. Everybody says watch the director's cut. I have not seen the director's cut. I do not know what the director's cut is like. All right. So I am merely going off the little bit over 2 hour cut of this movie. Basically because I just watched it yesterday. I didn't watch the director's cut. And back when I first watched this movie, there was no such thing as director's cuts. Like those didn't exist. Like if you were watching Blade Runner, you were just watching Blade Runner in the theater. If you're watching Apocalypse Now, it was just Apocalypse Now. You know, there was no director's cut. We did not have a DVD player. We didn't even have Beta, I think, whenever I watched it. There was not even Betamax or VCRs for people who may be younger watching this. All right. So Once Upon a Time in America, the summary of the film is this. It is a film that is about the growing up of friends in Manhattan, basically before Prohibition era to past Prohibition era. That basically they are, of course, young kids and they are friends, and they end up doing crimes together. And it is really based around one of their lives, but it revolves around all of them. Now, the main character, of course, Robert De Niro, of course. You know, I mean, if you know Robert De Niro's in your film, even if what's that Ben Stiller movie? I can't even think about what it is. The Ben Stiller movie where Meet the Fockers. Even that, Robert De Niro is the main character. I mean, he really is. You know, he's always going to be the main character. That's just what he plays. So he plays a guy named Noodles, and it's about Noodles and his friends growing up in Manhattan in early days New York as they mature, as they become gangsters, as they do heists, as they go up against different mob figures, and as they age. Now, that's the summary. The way this film starts out is kind of odd because the film oddly starts out in the middle of the story. It starts out as an issue is happening between Noodles and you don't know yet, but obviously somebody that Noodles and his friends have gone up against. All right, so it is also filled with, of course, flashbacks, and it is mainly about the homecoming of him being older, him being aged, and coming back, being called back to revisit not only Manhattan, but also the friends and loves that he left behind when he decided to leave. All right. Sorry, my watch is a little tight, so I'm being a little self-conscious about that. So it's, instead of being a film in which it is in present time with nothing but flashbacks, kind of like Godfather II. It's a prime example. In fact, a lot of this film inspired Godfather II. Hold on. You're welcome. Um, and you will see notable parts of this movie in other gangster flicks, not only like Godfather 2, but even all the way up to like Goodfellas, or Casino, like those flashback elements. The gangsters are older and now they're flashing back to how they got started. It's that kind of situation, except that this movie almost is Quentin Tarantino-ish. It starts in the middle and then has flashbacks and then has fast forwards. It's kind of neat in that way. Now, here are the things I did not know about this movie that I totally thought were false. Okay, that I found out to be true that I did not know. I didn't know. I always thought this was a Scorsese film, by the way. So when I first saw the movie as a teenager, the reason I saw this movie is because of the movie poster. Now, the movie poster, if those of us who are old enough, if you can recall this movie, it was a view from what's known as Washington Ave. And it's Washington Ave looking out to the Brooklyn Bridge. And it's 5 young kids kind of walking joyously across. And you see the bridge in the background. And it looks like old time New York, like almost like old brownstones. And that's the reason why I saw the movie. Now, I had always thought it was a Scorsese flick. I really did. Up until I watched it, even finishing watching it and looking up these facts in order to have this podcast, I always thought it was a Scorsese flick. It is not, which is even more amazing because it is a Sergio Leone film. So if you're not familiar with who Sergio Leone is the director, the Italian director who is behind spaghetti westerns, Fistful of Dollars, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. He is behind those movies. He's the director. He's an Italian director who basically directed those movies, which is odd but fitting, because we all know that. Okay, we don't all know. Sorry, that was my film pretension coming out, and I didn't mean to do that. So, Sergio Leone. All right, Sergio Leone was basically, his films were inspired by Kurosawa, just like Steven Spielberg's were, just like George Lucas's were. His films are very Kurosawa, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, and I don't care. I don't care if I am. They're very Kurosawa inspired. And so even Scorsese's been inspired by Kurosawa. Kurosawa is a Japanese director who did some of the best samurai movies of all time. Of course, the most notable being Seven Samurai, which is a phenomenal flick. What's it called? Where they kill themselves. What's it called? Not Harry Carey. No, it's not called that. There's Dreams. Dreams is like one of my favorite Kurosawa films of all time. It's great. By the way, in the film Dreams by Kurosawa, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are actually both in the movie. All right. So I did not know. I had no idea it was a Sergio Leone film. I really did not know. I thought it was a Scorsese flick. Again, I had not seen this movie since I was a teenager. So there it is. There was a piece of paper that was on a straw, and I knew it was going to come out. So I am a humongous fan. I like Godfather. Don't get me wrong. I am a fan of The Godfather. I think The Godfather 2 is I think it's a better film. I think it's a better film all around, and the reason why is because I enjoyed the flashback process. I like that. Where did the origin of the Godfather come from? Where did Michael come from? Where did these characters come from? Where did James Caan's character come from? Where do they come from? Not only where did they come from, but where did their family come from to create this process, to bring them into this process. And I've always liked that. I've always liked that in many films, not just mobster films, but especially Godfather II, I think does a great job. The killing of the main kind of strong arm in the neighborhood, to bringing them recognition, to create the olive oil company. I love that idea, that whole idea of the origin story. And this film does an amazing job at it. It spends a inordinate amount of time in that flashback of what was it like, you know, at the turn of the century. What was it like with these kids? They are children trying to make their own in that time in New York. For instance, buildings of apartments sharing a bathroom, um, the cops being on the take. By the way, Danny Aiello. Danny Aiello actually plays the chief of police. Name Aiello. Like, you wonder about that. Like, could he not answer to a different name? Maybe he wasn't good at it. I don't know. But he plays a man with his same name in this movie. I also love that. That's one of the reasons why I like Tony Danza. But don't judge me on that. All right. So, um, what was it like to live back then? What was it like to not have a fridge? What was it like to share a bathroom with an apartment building? What was it like to see your first vagina or your first set of titties? What was it like to have sex for the first time? It was all these, like, almost like about a boy kind of situation of what was it like to grow up. And what was it like to make a name for yourself, especially if you were going to get into that situation? Now, that brings me to what I think is I'm looking to see if there's another paper in my drink. Um, that brings me to James Russo. So, James Russo plays a gangster named Bugsy. Now, it's not Bugsy Malone, it is a callback. I would like to say this: the movie is based on a book by a guy named Harry Gray. Now, Harry Gray was a pseudonym for basically a Jewish guy who grew up in New York at those times, and went on to make a name for himself minutely as a gangster. And he wrote a book called The Hoods. And this movie is based on that book called The Hoods. Um, I've never read the book. I don't know anything about the book, so I can't tell you anything about it, but I can tell you this, that I probably will read it because it seems interesting. It seems very interesting. I That is another thing I really liked about this movie, is it doesn't center around the Italian gangsters. In fact, Noodles is Jewish. So Robert De Niro plays a Jew, which I thought was really interesting. So he plays, basically, they live, and you can see by these scenes, because in the flashback scenes, you see a lot of Hasidic Jews walking the streets. There's a Jewish deli that plays a very big part in this. In fact, I'm trying to think, the guy who owns the deli, he was in something else. Oh, so the guy who owns the deli is the wig shop salesman from Goodfellas. There, by the way, there's a lot of course. I mean, there's a niche there where a lot of these actors from gangster films play in other gangster films. Paulie Walnuts from Sopranos is a very good example of that. So if you ever seen The Sopranos or you ever seen Goodfellas, the guy who who helps them with the Lufthansa, however the fuck you say that name, heist, who owns the wig shop, he is the Jewish store owner in this movie. It's great. It's really neat. And I like always seeing these callbacks. These not callbacks, but these cameos by people I recognize in other projects that are playing in these projects. It's fun. It's fun. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, so it's based on a book called The Hoods, and I guess he was a columnist for a newspaper at one point. And I think his dad was some kind of food critic at one point also, which was kind of interesting. Because as we know, the Jewish people, they know their food. Listen, I love latkes and matzo ball soup as much as anybody. A good pastrami and rye, fantastic. That's about it. I don't know if there's anything else that I'm going to be like eating, but I digress. So the soundtrack to this is so cool. It is so not only in the flashbacks being the old school Italian and being the old orchestration and symphonic orchestrations, even when it goes into the modern times, the soundtrack is oddly soothing. It's oddly soothing in the face of weird violence. So that brings me to this. Not only did Sergio Leone direct this film, but Ennio Morricone, how do you pronounce his name? By the way, you're going to hear a lot of noises because my dog is very, very restless, but I decided I was going to trudge through. I'm looking it up. All right. Oh, nope. Music by. There we go. You hear that? Do you hear the tapping? Yeah, Ennio Morricone. So we all know, I may have to get up and let my dog out for a second. We don't all know, but hold on. I'm going to leave you in suspense for a second. Come on, Jeff. You want to go outside? Come on. Come on. Go. So, second odd piece of trivia. Not only did Sergio Leone was he the director, but Ennio Morricone, he did the soundtrack. Now, he is the man behind the soundtrack of all the spaghetti westerns. He is that man. He's the man that did the soundtrack for The Hateful Eight by Quentin Tarantino. By the way, that's not going to be part of this 30-day situation, mainly because I don't really feel like tearing a film apart. But he was the master behind the composition of your spaghetti westerns. So I thought that was unbelievably interesting. Like when I read that, it was typical, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Also, I found out that he was offered the chance to move to LA supposedly hundreds of times and never would. Stayed in Italy. So that's another piece of trivia on this film. This film very much, it plays New York. It plays on old school New York. Yet, most of this film was filmed in Italy. Most of it was not even filmed in the US at all. Um, I do want to talk for a second, and I think I should have prefaced this a long time ago. Um, uh, I even hate using this fucking word. Trigger warning. So the trigger warning is this: there's a lot of rape. There's a lot of violence towards women in this movie. All right. Now, am I going to say that's a bad thing? No, absolutely not. Some films need it. Most films that, if written well and have that situation played in the plot and it plays the plot forward, it's integral. It is. But I think I should probably let anybody know who might want to watch this film that that is a part of this film. It is. There is a lot of violence towards women in this film, but there's just a lot of violence, period. So let's get around to the what I think is the one big unsung hero of this film, acting wise, which is James Russo. James Russo is not in a lot of this film, but he is integral to the development of the characters in this movie. He plays a local neighborhood gangster named Bugsy, and nobody wants to cross Bugsy. Nobody wants to, not even the cops. He is on the cops' payroll. The cops are on his payroll. Sorry, but the cops are on his payroll. Now, the way he plays this character is brutal. And you would imagine at this time, especially at the turn of the century, when you're making making a name for yourself, as we have all heard the stories, whether it is Al Capone, whether it was Meyer Lansky. By the way, that's a good piece of trivia. They were brutal sons of bitches. They were, and they had to be. It was a fairly brutal fucking time. One of my favorite stories my grandma used to tell me is that back in the day when they would be standing on a street corner and the cops would be chasing a gangster, and they'd be chasing them in cars. The gangsters would come around the corner and they were Model A's or Model T's or whatever. They would tip over. They were very top heavy. There were times in which they would tip over. So all the kids would run up the street and push the car back over. The gangsters throw out a bunch of change. They go on. Now the cops would come around the corner and the car would tip over, and then all the kids would run and they would not help the cops at all, which I thought was funny because you see that in this film. You see the inability to help the police. You see the inability to help the coppers. All right. Um, and James Russo plays into that very well. Of I own this neighborhood. How dare you, little punks, try to usurp me, try to elbow in on my business, and he plays it in a spectacularly good fashion. In fact, shoots a kid in the back, a little kid too. This kid could not have been maybe 10 years old. Also, Harry Gray, who wrote The Hoods, he dropped out of school in grade 7, never completed. So he lived in those kind of times, in the time in which these gangsters and you were even left to fend for yourself or to earn money for your family. And I thought that James Russo played it very well. He played it exactly how it was supposed to. Hold on. I'm going to go be a dog doorman. I'm going to let my dog in. Come on. Okay, there you go. So I really do think he is a unrecognized hero in acting in this film. He really does elevate the plot forward. He is one of the reasons why the kids basically elevate their game. I use the word elevate too much there. And I've loved not only the character that he played, but the way he played that character. So he's kind of unrecognized because if you go to IMDb in the cast, he's not mentioned till pretty far down there. Now, let's talk about the philosophical, as I wrap this up, let's talk about the philosophical points of what I feel are the philosophical points of this movie. All right. The philosophical points of this movie are what I believe the philosophical points of this movie is the evolution, not only, that's my phone, just leave it alone. The elevation of men. And not only that, but the evolution, that's probably a better word. The evolution of boys growing to manhood. But not only that, but the evolution of friendships, the evolution of relationships, the evolution of romantic relationships and learning your way through them, and the evolution of clawing your way. Jeff, no. You like that? The evolution of clawing your way, and some people succeed and some people fail, and the difference in succeeding with guilt and not succeeding with humility. And it plays with also the change of time and technology, which I thought was really, really well done in this. It was amazingly well done. The going from horse and cart and carriage to the 1960s automobile. And we think about this. I think about this. I wouldn't say we do, but I think about this, which is I hear this often. That right now we live in the best of times. We live in the best of times. We can cure the most diseases. We have the least people hungry. We have the least people in poverty. That we are living through a fantastic, amazing time. But I always think about this. Can you imagine what our grandparents saw? Our grandparents, from going before the telephone was even there, to going to where a town had like one telephone, to going to this. It was very well played in this movie. Now, of course, it doesn't bring up cell phone times. It only brings up to, I think, maybe early 60s, late 60s, maybe at the most. But the way it's done, the two parallel, the evolution and evolutions and of friendships, the evolutions of somebody personally, and the evolutions of technology and manufacturing, of social mores, is done so unbelievably well. And I'm saying the word unbelievably a lot. So philosophically, that's what I feel the movie's about. Philosophically, I feel like the movie really is more about balancing out success, retribution, regret, and revenge, and how that evolves and how your feelings personally evolve, and also how society's feelings behind those that evolve, and it was well done. It was well done. I am glad I revisited. Now, if you decide to watch the regular cut, like I watched, by the way, I'm going to let you know how to watch all these movies. This was on Netflix. Um, if you decide to watch the one on Netflix, I'm going to be honest with you, it kind of plays like a TV movie. But come to find out, supposedly the final cut was like 9 hours or something like that. And they were going to divide it into three 2-hour movies or something like that. And then they cut it down. Um, of course, nobody, it's going to be rare somebody sits through that many movies, you know, um, especially about the same topic, especially about the same director. It's going to be odd. So I can say that nostalgia, the movie was better than watching it now. Again, it does kind of play like a TV movie, but you have to take it in the era in which it was made. And you also have to take it in the influence that it gave other films that were made. By the way, it did. It blew my mind that Sergio Leone did this movie. I really did think it was a Scorsese flick. I truly did. And it plays exactly like a Scorsese flick. So when you watch it, just so you know, don't cast too hard of an eye on it. In fact, who was it? I think was it James Woods that felt like this movie was better than Godfather II. No, I disagree. But Godfather 2 had time to evolve. It had time to learn from this movie. It could learn from this flick, you know? So it was a little different. I enjoyed it. Let's say if I was going to give it something out of 4 stars, let's go 5 stars. Let's say I was going to give it out of 5 stars. I'd put it somewhere in the 4-star category. All right. And you kind of can't beat the cast. You really cannot beat the cast. And you can see them testing out kind of like their acting chops in this genre, you know? So, hopefully I watched a movie that you don't have to, but you should. I will say this, you should. You should watch Once Upon a Time in America. It's a great flick. Is it an excellent? Is a phenomenal flick? I would prefer one of his spaghetti westerns, but I did enjoy it. I did. I enjoyed it, and maybe you will too. So if you get a chance to watch it, watch it, and I will see you tomorrow with another movie review. Thank you for watching this if you decide to, and have a good Wednesday. Fucking cheers. Look at that. That's how uncultured I am right there. There's still like a label on this cup. So, all right, very good. Thank you for tuning in, for watching it. Of course, I'm going to say everything that everybody else says, which is if you liked it, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, I'm literally going to do this every day. I'm going to try to do this. I travel a lot, so I'm going to try to do this every day for the month of August. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope I hope I gave a little advice and credence to this film, because this film went on to inspire a lot of films and was inspired by a lot of films. And you kind of can't beat the director. You really can't. You can't beat it. So have a good night. Enjoy. Mwah.